Oh,
Croquet. So, how are things down under?
yeah, pretty crazy. Lots of scared people think our prices are going to go up and up and up.
All this terror stuff. My daughter has been gone the last week. She went on a school trip to Panama, and made me realize that I don't think I really want to. You know, I think I need to move if she goes to college. I think I need to follow her. Like a week without her is pretty. You have a daughter, right?
Yeah, yeah.
How old is she now?
She is turned 2 in January.
See, those are the good ages because you don't have to beg them to spend time with you.
Oh, she thinks I'm the biggest celebrity. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, daughters, I think I don't know. I think dads and daughters have this special bond that when dads walk in, they light up. The kids lit up. They love it. We're always hero. It's like this whole. It's the only women in our life we can truly please. Where they're like,
Yeah, well, and we understand because at that point, we're the only men in their lives. We're
exactly.
completely
Of course.
responsible already for everything,
Exactly.
for how messed up
Yes.
they are. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. So I
Yeah,
don't know.
no, it'd be
She's a
hard to, well, it's been hard. My boys have been gone forever. We finally got their passports printed. They're in the mail right now. So hopefully I
nice.
should be seeing them in a couple of months. Yeah. And
Nice.
they'll be able to meet their sister for the first time.
Have they
Yeah.
been to Australia?
Oh yeah, plenty of times. Well, the
Oh, that's
oldest two
right.
were
Yeah, you
born
did tell
here.
me.
So the difficulty has been getting the dual passports. They're like
Ah.
the born identity when they fly. They have to have papers.
Wait, so they have dual citizenship?
Yeah.
How does that
So
even work? I've never understood dual citizenship to begin with. This is like, shouldn't we have like some kind of tariff on citizenship?
yeah, so yeah, there is. Well,
You have
no.
to give up. You have to give up two of your children to be
So
able to
this
get.
is why the tariff doesn't surprise me, because America and Australia already have a relationship like that, and like America does with everybody about borders, right? So
Mm,
America will not let Australians in without certain restrictions and visas and limitations, and so we do the same thing with America.
right. Yeah. Yeah, we did. I was shocked to have to get a visa before I went there.
Yeah, and then but similarly,
Reciprocity, right?
because you offer dual citizenship for Australians, we offer dual citizenship for Americans. So it's it's a
Is that how it
reciprocatory
is?
tariff.
Is that how it works?
No, I was born here, so lucky for me. And I don't have American citizenship, so I was
Mm.
a permanent resident there. But my kids have dual citizenship.
Welcome to the conversation where we unpack the wild, interconnected chaos shaping our world, including the population decline and all the reasons for it. You're here with Joe Edgar and Ethan Kruk. And Ethan, you brought up these tariffs. Ethan's out of Australia, so I think that's a fun topic to start us off. So I've been playing on Twitter. As I said, I have a Twitter addiction, X.
Mhm.
And I've found that there are two arguments going on when they talk about tariffs. And my take is that they're both right, but you have to put them in context. I live in a cul-de-sac, this neighborhood. It made me think like the basics of this, everyone should understand. If you have a cul-de-sac and there's one great big white house, and let's say there's Big Tony that lives there with his wife, Karen. So Big Tony and Karen are living in this great big white house. They drive expensive cars, and they have
Do we live in the same cul-de-sac?
this is not my cul-de-sac. I'm looking at my neighbor right now. I'm in the dinky one. But they're definitely living on debt, you know. But right next to him is I don't know, like Mike. Mike loves to sell syrup, so Mike's got all this syrup that he can sell, and Tony living in this big White House loves syrup. And then, right next to him, he's got Frank, and Frank sells burritos. And he's like, oh, I love burritos as well. They're all in the same. And then, across from the cul-de-sac, they have like Pierre. And Pierre is selling like croissant. I just watched a show where they pronounce the croissant.
How deep?
But he's selling these croissants. And then, they'd have down the street a ways would be like a little dinky house with maybe Elizabeth who lives there, and nobody knows why she has lots of money all the time, but she's always visiting all the neighbors with a bottle of vodka. So there's Elizabeth, lives in this trashy house with a bunch of kids. And then across from her is this other kind of gigantic, big red house. And, I don't know. Bob lives there. And Bob is like very handy. So he sells like all kinds of little trinkets, and he can make them. He can make like pink flamingos and sunglasses and all kinds of things, right? So that's like the neighborhood. That's the neighborhood. And I mean, do you cook at all?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, all right. I've gotten into cooking myself. In fact, I do most of dinner. Like
I cooked a
Michaela's
roast.
not here because nobody eats.
Yeah, I cooked a
You said,
roast for my daughter the other day. And I actually posted a picture on Facebook because I was so proud of myself. And because she ate it, right? There's lots of veggies and she ate it. So,
what do you put in, like potatoes and carrots? Or?
Yeah, not real vegetables. Potatoes, carrots, peas, corn. Yeah.
Nice. You still drink Coke? We got to do a segment on soda.
No, I drink beer now.
No, okay. So now the saying would be, if God would have wanted you to drink water, he wouldn't have made beer. Is that the
100%.
Nice.
What isn't water? You get that from the toilet, right? That's the same.
Exactly,
You're talking about that. You're drinking that. Okay.
Right. That's to wash your shoes off.
It's to wash your
sprinkle something
bum.
on the lawn. Yeah, there you go.
It's to wash everything in the shower.
So when you cook, you run out of stuff and you're like, okay, I got to borrow eggs, or I got to borrow someone from my neighbor, right? And so if you run out and you don't have anything, you run to your neighbors. So just as we do eggs, if anybody's ever borrowed an egg, I think standard was, when I was a kid, if we ever borrowed eggs, we always had to bring back a whole case of eggs. It was the interest, right? So same thing, I think, in this neighborhood, that if you were to buy something, if you're going to say, okay, I'm going to buy my syrup from Mike next door. I really like it.
You're really into the syrup.
He loves syrup. He'll put it on the burrito. He's wrapping it around. The syrup's great. But then as Tony is living in this big house, unfortunately, he's running a lot of debt. He works at a fast food restaurant and he moonlights at Uber, right? So this is his job because he is, overextended, very busy, working it out. Maybe a lemonade stand during the day. And so he ends up making this deal where he's like, listen, how about I'll buy a little syrup from you with a small IOU, and then I'll kind of do that with this neighbor over here. And if you put it in that context, like that's the neighborhood, and you talk about tariffs, then it makes sense, because you could go and say, Tony's like, listen, I love your syrup. I want to buy it, but I want to charge a little transaction fee to get a little something for myself. So, especially if he has kids and his kids are going up and buying burritos and syrup, he's like, well, why don't I throw a little bit in for me? So then Mike's like, well, then I'm going to throw in a little bit for me too. And so then you end up costing the same. You got tariffs going everywhere, and everybody's basically charging everybody fees. And it's a whole bunch of adults trying to, make a little money off their children, right? So that is the normal argument. And so anyone who's pitching tariffs, that's true. That argument is correct, that if you were to be the first mover on a tariff, you would be able to make money until everybody comes after you. So right now, the president, held up a sign where he showed, here's the tariffs being charged to us. Here's the tariffs we're going to charge. And everybody's like, yeah, finally, it's fair. It's all fair. Okay, not everybody. But a good mix. I would say at least Vance and Levitt, who I like to focus on at the moment. So they're definitely echoing, this rhetoric that's fair. Now, that would be true, but add in Tony, and Tony has a lot of debt. So Tony comes up with this idea. Tony's like, I'm going to create HOA bucks. So he becomes the president of the HOA. I don't know. Do you have HOAs over there?
No.
Oh, thank goodness. We got them everywhere here. So your HOA, like, they control your neighborhood, and you got to pay dues, and this whole mess. And you got
we have body corporates, but that would be like in a complex or apartments or, townhouses. So that would be,
We have the same thing, but those are for townhouses or houses. But this would be neighborhoods, just like single family
Yeah.
homes, like an actual neighborhood.
I'm
They're
sure
like
you could
for
have
our block.
exclusive neighborhoods here, which would probably have something similar. And local councils would demand certain building requirements and certain maintenance. So that's why we wouldn't have the HOA, because the local council would take care of a lot of that.
So who gets after you if you leave like a boat in your driveway?
Yeah, that'd
Who
be the
hunts
local
after you?
council.
Oh, it's a
And see, they
council,
would
really?
fine you. So it's a better system for the government, right? Because they can make their money.
They're looking. And see, ours is the actual neighborhood. The city's
Yeah,
like,
so
we don't care where you park your boat.
the government
So-
beat Tony to that
exactly.
idea.
So Tony's all over this. So Tony decides, I'm going to introduce HOA bucks. So he's going to launch his own HOA bucks. And he goes over to Mike and he's like, listen, what do you say? I pay you in HOA bucks. And so, and you know, he goes to everybody and basically says, what if I pay you in HOA bucks? And of course, everybody's going to be like, why don't you pay me in my money? Like, why would you pay me in HOA bucks? So he's got to prove that HOA bucks have a purpose and are worth value, right? So he says, hey, but I'll make it sweet. I'll pay you in HOA bucks. Then you can loan me back those HOA bucks and I'll pay you interest on them. So then, like, you know, this is definitely sounding suspicious, right? I mean, and here's what's funny is like Karen's over taking selfies in like Greenland and, you know, snapshotting and yelling about how Pierre is, pathetic and, outright freeloaders. But as I explain this now and you look at it, you may see that it's probably Pierre who is looking at, Tony and saying like, I think you're the freeloader. You are really trying to pitch us this Ponzi scheme, right? So it does sound like a Ponzi scheme. And so he convinces everybody to say, okay, I'm going to do this. So he starts buying everything in HOA bucks. And then everybody takes those HOA bucks. If they have any extra, they loan it back to Tony and Tony pays them a little interest. And pretty soon there's so many HOA bucks out there. People are like even loaning it to themselves and they go. So that's the context of our reality. So in the U.S., we owe 37 trillion in debt. We're running a 2 trillion a year deficit. So because we run debt, we don't have the ability to go and push people on tariffs. An economy that runs on debt has to do one thing. They have to make sure there's a whole lot of their currency out there so people keep buying their debt. Otherwise, they have massive problems. And that's what we're in. So tariffs like this could happen. And the first argument could take place if the U.S. were to actually have a balanced budget or even a surplus and start paying off debt. Then they could go and argue about tariffs. But until then, they have to run it. So what is a trade deficit? So some might say, well, that's not what's going on because if we're buying from someone else, we're giving them trade. But really, the deficit is the net impact. So if you run a deficit, it means you got goods, and then you gave that country money. And the money we're giving them is U.S. currency. So 55% of the U.S. currency is outside the United States. It's pretty crazy, right? 65% of all loans done in the world, international loans, are done in U.S. currency because there's so much U.S. currency out there. And how do we get so much U.S. currency out there? It's literally through trade deficits. It's the only way to get it out there. So we take in goods, and the net difference is we got your goods and we gave you a bunch of cash. And then what are people going to do with that cash? Well, we tell them, well, luckily we have this great product we'll offer. And you can give it back to us to buy more stuff.
Tony's problem is that the only way he can make money is by selling his credit card. And he's not going to... Well, but the thing is, let's talk about what Liberation Day really is, though. Do you think Tony's really going to stop handing out credit cards? Or is he just going to try and change the rates on the credit cards, right? Like, this is all leverage. And but the funny thing is like, internationally, governments are going to use this for their own interests and not the people's interests, the political party's interests. Because the problem is that countries aren't run by the people anywhere in the world anymore. They're run by, politically elite who don't represent the people. They represent themselves and their party.
I mean, are you
And
talking about like maybe a Musk and a Soros or
no, I'm talking about
no?
Bush. I'm talking about a Clinton. I'm talking about a Biden. I'm talking about a Trump.
Oh, I
I'm
mean,
talking
but in
about
their presidency, are you talking about like an individual, like a
so
wealthy
I'll
plutocracy, or
I'll give you an example of how tariffs work against me and my people here in Australia.
I like it.
And it's not in the way that you think, because the tariffs aren't going to, like the tariffs are just a way of America getting some mineral rights deals with us, which they can get anyway, because we have so many, partnerships, not just trade partnerships. We're talking arms partnerships, security partnerships, you know,
I think
technology
we get
partnerships.
100% of our kangaroo meat from Australia. No,
Possibly, I don't know. Okay, but so what I'm saying is, so we don't have a leader here that is representing the people, because our leader here is now using the tariffs as political currency, because he's going to make a deal with President Trump, even though he's publicly denouncing President Trump. Even, Trump's reciprocating that show of, upset neighbors by not taking his phone calls.
and this is
But
the sitting prime minister.
the sitting prime minister, and he's going to use it to get re-elected, because he's done nothing in his current term, no success at all, and now he's going to use this trade war as a success going into his election next month, because he's going to close a deal in the next couple of weeks where he will give over more of
So
my
he's going to
wealth.
play his trump card now.
He's going to do it. He's going to do a deal with Trump. He's going to save Australian farmers. He's going to look like a hero.
Now,
And
is
we're
he
going to
going to do it
have
on the backs of saying like I took the bull by the horns and I managed to make a good deal?
he's gonna pretend to be a populist government by representing the people against the big bad America.
And is
And it
this going to be
sucks.
in lower tariffs to get the U.S. to lower their tariffs?
He'll get, well, I don't think all of the tariffs are going to stand against all of the partners. I think you'll find some of the tariffs from other partners dropping, and so I think this will create more free trade. Sorry, the analysts and the experts. The reason why I know that they're wrong, especially whatever's coming on the TV or the main voice, the reason why I know it's wrong is because it's been wrong about everything for the last 5 years. And so I don't have to be an expert in anything anymore. I can just watch TV for 15 minutes, tune into any channel, doesn't matter whether it's left or right, listen to a financial commentator, and whatever they say, I can bet the opposite of.
The
Like, I
opposite.
can bet the opposite of 100%. And so, like, what this is really going to do is it's going to force international partners to give even better manipulation and trading power to America. It's going to force countries to, in order to make it look like they're getting rid of tariffs, countries are going to give up more of their sovereign wealth to America at a deal with our HOA bucks. And, we're all going to buy a new credit card at a higher interest rate, basically. So it's going to work for Trump. I don't like it, but it is what it is.
So you cover that. You think by it working for Trump means eventually markets are going down. They're sour right now. Things will kind of level out. But because he's going to get better deals from states, basically trying to win the largest consuming economy, that he's going to win on the fact that people are just willing to give.
Did the markets move before the actual recession in 2008? Which way were they moving before everyone knew what was happening? So if you're telling me that all of a sudden economists can predict what the economy is doing,
Right.
then tell me what the new app is. Tell me,
And by what you're talking about,
is Grok saying this now? Is this why we think that we know what we're doing?
I think I definitely heard you say it, so that's why.
Well, look at the current expert crisis that we had, and the rest of the international community followed American advice. All right, so Dr. Fauci wasn't just America's hero; he was the international hero. The experts here were just quoting Dr. Fauci in how to keep us safe from COVID. And what it did, it exposed massively how corrupt the health industry is and science is, and not only that, America spends the most money on health. And apparently you guys have the sickest people.
We do have some of the sickest people, and we do spend the most on health, but we do subsidize a lot of the world's medicines. So you can buy many of the drugs in Europe at a much cheaper price there than you can here. In fact, sometimes you can get them earlier in Europe because they don't have the FDA. A lot of Africa gets much cheaper drugs. And so we do have this ability to sell to the rest of the world where the U.S. subsidizes
your drugs, mate. Like you guys are the sickest people in the world because of your drugs.
It's true.
And the rest of us don't need your drugs. You subsidize them to us because we don't buy them. Pump them
so
here.
I see. You're saying we'll keep our kangaroos, you keep your drugs.
I'm saying we don't allow pharmaceutical advertising here. That's why
None.
you subsidize it. I'm sure that's like that in a lot of European companies because the pharmaceutical companies are doing whatever they can to get into Europe, into these markets. They're in America. They're selling it because America will buy whatever's on the TV, and they are on the TVs constantly. And so that's why America is buying all these drugs. That's why America has the highest rates of all the worst kind of health issues.
We're less obese now. I don't know if you've noticed. We are less obese.
Because of the new wonder drug? Yeah.
Let's
see what that does.
LP1 drugs has changed the world quite a bit here. So, as an example of drugs nobody else wants.
As well, Joe. Like the celebrities are getting thinner.
I don't know if that's true yet. That data is
not out. They used to live forever. What happened?
Well, yeah, we're definitely not living as long. The U.S. is a great example of a very wealthy nation that life expectancy was going up. Hit COVID, dropped down a little bit. Now it's slightly going back up again. So it looks like COVID dinged it, but we definitely are not continuing this longevity that many predicted would happen. What was the opioid epidemic like in Australia? Did they have one? Was it anything like what we had here?
We used to grow our own opium. I think we still grow a small amount possibly, but we used to have like a really big opioid farm down in Tasmania. But I believe that we did some kind of deal with one of your pharmaceutical companies and not just that, we changed restrictions. So this is part of my conspiracy theory about COVID, right? So before COVID was announced, we in Australia, like for the longest time that I can remember, my mum used to send me codeine in the mail, right, to America because you can't get codeine, right? And over the counter, I mean, like you have to get a prescription or something. But here we could get it without a prescription, just over the counter. And I believe it was because we were probably making a lot of it ourselves. So, it didn't cost us a lot. They were making money off it, so they're selling. And it was cheap. Like, I'm talking you could buy like, a pack of what would you now buy from a chemist for like,
I have
3 or 4
idea.
times as much, right? Like $40 worth of tablets now would have been $10 tablets, pre-COVID. And you would take that when you got the flu. You'd take codeine when you got the flu. Everyone knows when you got the flu, you take codeine and you don't even know you've got the flu. Like, you chill, it takes care of the...
you don't remember where you are in general.
No,
now, I don't know that much about codeine. Is codeine like an Oxycontin? Or is it just a
Oxycontin is an extreme version of it. We have a lot lower, it's a lot lower dosage.
Okay.
But still,
so
it's enough to take care of the aches and pains, that you get in a cold or flu. And anyway, right before COVID, like months before COVID, they made it a prescription drug and it increased in value. So when COVID hit, people thought that they were dying from the worst flu ever, but it was because they couldn't medicate themselves like they used to as well.
So I mean, does it have medicinal purposes outside of being a painkiller?
Yeah, it actually reduces the symptoms as well.
Oh, so codeine isn't just a painkiller then? I got you.
It's not just a painkiller.
Oxycontin, I think, is just a painkiller.
I'm sure Oxycontin would help you with the flu. But like, so right now, like you could get, or like even the most common prescription here, I believe, for the flu is called Ricodine. And it's like a cough syrup with codeine in it.
Mm.
And once upon a time, before COVID, you could get that over the counter.
Now they're making
you
cocktails and...
Yeah. Well, the syrup? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Do they have ketchup flavor? I know when we went there, that was the most surprising. I was like, tomato sauce, Pringles chips. I was like, yep, that's only in Australia.
I don't do that.
No ketchup. No. You're like, no, that's not happening.
Not on Pringles chips. But I don't understand people who eat plain chips, to be honest. Like my parents eat just plain salt chips.
Oh,
right?
just salt?
I have to do vinegar with there as well, right? Salt and vinegar or some kind of other,
salt and vinegar.
some
I was going to say I'm
flavor.
a salt and vinegar or a black pepper. Actually, I just found this chips here in Texas. They have HEB and they sell a sweet pickle or like bread and butter pickle chips. And I just tried those out. I love sweet I love sweet pickles on a sandwich. So I was pretty impressed. I have to go back and get some before they go out.
You should check out, I'm
Maybe.
sure somewhere has them in Australia, but we have Red Rock Deli. So they're baked potato chips, but they have sweet chili
Oh,
and
those are
sour
American. So
cream.
you won't be getting those anymore. Those are different.
No, we do sell them there, but we have them here. And then the other ones like lime, pepper, cracked pepper and lime. But oh my, 2 flavors of chips. You should go check them out. Is there a world market, or did they go bankrupt too?
Oh, we do have a world market here. Yeah, that's where I used to get
Yeah,
my Bundaberg
yeah,
ginger
Vegemite.
beer. Yeah. It's been too long. I can't do Vegemite anymore. Vegemite, Promite. No, it's gone. It's gone. China is Australia's largest trade partner, right?
Yeah, this is the other thing. Australia only, you guys
Right.
represent 5% of our
Right. Like
actual
such
who
a
we
thing.
sell to.
But your prime minister is going to make it the biggest press
But
release
he's
to
going to
look
use
like
that
I
as
did a deal.
political fuel.
Right.
Exactly, like your commentators, like whatever leverage or percentage gap they can expose, that's what they'll focus on in the media clips and show how this is a huge success for Australia.
One thing that's also left out in this scenario that isn't there that I just saw with lumber. So we're doing a real estate development in Oregon. And so I've been watching these lumber prices. And as soon as they talk about tariffs, they go up. There's a Canadian firm that bought the Geld Wind Oregon firm, very large, was a privately held company until they got bought by the Canadian private equity firm. You're already seeing lumber go up. And so there's been lots of talk like the U.S. has its own lumber, similar to our own kangaroos. So we produce our own lumber here. It is true. But logistics and distribution channels, it's a large amount of it is a Canadian company. And so the Canadian company, they're sitting saying like, okay, well, all right, if we have a tariff, let's change logistics and let's rerun it all in the U.S. And now we have a tariff price. So they're going to raise the U.S. price to just below the tariff price. And now because they make so much money, they don't actually have to hire any new people because they're like, well, our lumber is actually just slightly lower than the tariff price, but we make the same amount of profit because we're making more per board. And so this is one thing a lot of people don't understand in a debt kind of economy. This will happen to tariffs in general in that same scenario. And so I did post it out just because you're already seeing it lumber. Lumber already went up and many other goods will go up. So I saw Trump's threat where he talked about the automakers. He's like, if you charge more for the cars, we'll come after you, which is a price control. But a lot of the automakers have already said, we're basically just going to have to say, here's our price. And on top of it, like you pay the tariff, which I don't think they're going to be able to get away with because that makes the administration look bad and it would be on every car sticker. And so it doesn't do good. But one thing that's left out
You don't make any
is
cars in the US, Joe?
we do make cars, but you have to remember most cars, if you look on any car here, even the Tesla, which the Tesla is a very American car, and most of them are made in America. But America's a continent, not a country. So a lot of these cars are made in Canada and Mexico. They are assembled in the US. So all the parts are made. That is why we go down. We can get, affordable labor. We can get access to many resources, and we can buy lots of little screws, nuts, and bolts and bring them all into the US and assemble them. And then the car is specifically made in America, not necessarily the United States, but many of them were assembled here. And the US is an economy that 80% of US workers are service industry. So only 20% is what you might say
America
non-service.
doesn't really produce much anything.
We don't, right? Well, we're operational gains. So just think we're consumers. We're definitely consumers. But if you were to build a factory here now, everyone's like, oh, we're bringing back these factory jobs. Well, what are these factory jobs? If you build a 21st century factory, it's not what you think it is. So even 10 years ago, when I was with the governor's office, we helped bring in Caterpillar. And to get a tour of Caterpillar's plant is just amazing. there are, one guy to 4 robots that are
Yeah.
building massive things. And so if you go into any plant, the brains behind it are going to be all the software. This is not a low skilled labor job, right? So this is high end,
Yeah.
this is service. Then you're
But
going to
it's
go into,
but it's not. But
go
it's
ahead.
service that you don't need the labor that you're talking about, because that's their plan. They're going to use high tech. Their plan is, I think I heard an announcement from Musk the other day that he reckons by the end of this year there'll be a fleet of working Tesla bots. So
Right.
that's their plan. Their plan is to reduce the labor force anyway. That's how they plan on reducing the health needs of the economy as well, is by reducing or even offsetting the population crisis too, right? Is that,
And we got to go
removing
one of these
the
times.
demand. You don't have the job crisis either, because I don't know.
Well,
I feel like
we got to go through
sorry.
we got to go through an episode one time where we really talk about retirement and what is going to
Yeah,
happen in the future, because that's part of this. Or we could even segue onto it right now. But I only want to finish on the point that if you build all these factories, they could be anywhere, and the U.S. would be able to supply the same services, because the software is going to come from the U.S. The operational, brains about putting it all together are going to come from the U.S. The logistical side of the brains are going to come from the U.S. So really, you're just talking about bringing stuff in and a few people working there. Those aren't jobs Americans want or would work for. So
but
the jobs they're claiming are coming here.
I think they believe that the jobs are going to be irrelevant. A lot of the jobs that we, that are in the conversation right now, they believe they're going to be irrelevant. That's the problem. We should stick on the technology thing now, because it's not just the Tesla bots; it's the AI and it's the quantum computing as well. So and not just that. I mean, have to have advancements in power already, and even nuclear.
You mean
We would have
energy by power,
advancements. Sorry.
like
Yeah,
fusion? I mean, what do you mean by power?
electricity. Like
Yeah,
this is why the
electricity. Yep.
tariffs. This will tie into exactly why the tariffs won't affect Australia anyway, because even if we are massive consumers of American products, right? But we wouldn't stop buying, because we can't afford to buy our own stuff anyway. This is only going to hurt us. Like our products, we're going to have to be buying more Australian, or they're going to be told to buy more Australian. But the thing is, we rely on renewable energy in Australia. Our greenies are destroying rainforests to build windmills. So they're wiping out koalas to put up windmills so we can have clean energy. But that means that everything that we buy here costs more. So we can't even afford to buy here. So we have to buy from
I kind of pictured
an
emu on a track, like just running, like.
Yeah, but it's a metal emu. It's terrible.
Oh,
We should do that. That would be better for the animal wildlife, and it would be more. It'd be more a natural form of energy if we just harnessed emu power. I reckon, yeah, for sure.
You'd definitely be a leg up on the energy side of an emu. So.
But no, but this is a problem. Is that Australia doesn't want to even. Australia puts its own tariffs on itself without America's help.
Australia is similar to Texas. Texas has its own grid that starts and stops in the state. And so it is an isolated island in some regards, just connected to land. So it more than 50% of Texas' electricity is renewables. And here we define renewables, wind and electric are both considered renewables. Nuclear is now less, but wind is like over 40% and solar is now over 10%. So it has come along. There's a lot of energy. However, if you really are going to push AI, those chips are going to consume way more electricity than we have. And so it is true that the amount of energy that we can produce is going to be a massive.
But we still won't use nuclear here. Or how does Trump say it? Nuclear? I don't know how the other way to say it.
Nuclear.
Anyway, we don't even use that here, but we have one of the richest uranium deposits. So we know that uranium is bad, so we don't use it. We just sell it to China and America. Like, it's so dumb. We should be using that to make power here and advancing that technology if it hasn't already been advanced, as well as looking into other ways. Even there's other ways of doing renewable energy than trying to make sciences that didn't work 20, 30, 40 years ago still work today, because that's what's in the market. For more harm for the environment than it is doing good. because it's just a massive manufacturer of pollution that doesn't solve the problem it was intended to, to fix. But I come into it, I think real technology, this is a new war, the tariff war, or and this is what people aren't understanding. The media keeps talking about how all of the old traditions and old agreements are kind of out the window. And that's true. That's what happens in war. There's renegotiation in war. But, everyone's still holding on to these old promises and old contracts that existed in a world that doesn't exist anymore. And so in this new world, and it's going to be a technological one, if we survive.
By old contracts, do you mean like this is how the world worked when I was
I'm saying, part of Tony's problem is people don't want to use the credit card anymore. And so Tony's got a big problem with that. Okay?
He's got a huge problem.
And
so that's why I say tariffs.
So Tony needs to work out another way.
He's paying with HOA bucks, and everybody's starting to say like,
but
I could make my own HOA bucks.
That's the thing. And everyone's going to, everyone is making their own
HOA
bucks.
So what's sad is getting anyone not to continue to use HOA bucks is bad. And what's funny is
the world is going that way anyway because of what Tony decided to do. Like he didn't pay attention to the maths, right? You're a mathematician.
Yes.
So, at some point in this Ponzi scheme, like even a Ponzi scheme has to be managed well to work. Otherwise, otherwise it falls down and then the person who was on top goes to jail. That may happen. Maybe America.
We need the rest of the world using our money. The U.S. currency needs to be in everyone's
Find another
hands.
purpose in life than being Tony in the big white house.
But that's
Find
it right now.
And then sell
we can't
that to us.
unless if we stop going into debt. Like if we said got a real job instead of working like all the fast food jobs, everybody's worked out and running on debt. We could do it. Then we can have real conversations. But 37 trillion with running a 2 trillion deficit a year, you can't have both worlds. And so. Even to push, like they started the crypto reserve. The crypto reserve is a bet against the U.S. currency. It makes no sense. Why would they make any bets against U.S. currency right now when we're running debt? And that's really the issue is like we should be pushing the world to continue to use, and this coming from an American who doesn't want to collapse and expose the Ponzi scheme. We need to push the world to use the U.S. currency as much as we can and having them look at any tariff to do anything to say, globalization is an important function and the U.S. is the center of it. So to have an administration who believes that globalization has ripped us off is mind-boggling because the U.S. has benefited the most from globalization.
And
if you get rid of globalization...
I tell you what's happening. Have you heard of extortion? So Tony knows what extortion is because before he was...
now I'm thinking of like, maybe I should have, I'm thinking like Sopranos now, right?
Yeah. Before he came up with the HOA bucks, he used to use that to make money, extortion. So now that Tony, he knows he can't keep the HOA Ponzi scheme going anymore. Now he's going to show his neighbors his value and he's going back to extortion. And that's what America is doing. That's what America is doing. So America knows that the dollar is going to drop. So we're going towards some kind of confrontation there. But America, it doesn't need the dollars.
But it didn't drop until these tariffs were announced.
Yeah, and it's just dropped. But
you're saying the inevitable.
I'm saying there's ups and downs. There's going to be reactions, and there's nothing happens in a day except for a news cycle. And everything happens in a day in a news cycle, and then every day the world ends, and then you wake up tomorrow, and it's the same with a new opportunity. So, I don't believe what the experts are telling us, and I believe that America's value has always been you may think that America's value is lending money, and maybe it was for a time, but everyone's caught on to that scheme, and so we don't want to do it anymore. So America's got to come up with a new value in the world, and that value is security, and that's what's going to happen. They're going to offer security, and they're going to use. And
by security, you mean so like Tony extortion? I'm going to be like, we'll protect you.
Yes,
if you pay us.
Yes, 100%. We're going
to give you NATO. We're
going to give you nuclear submarines. We're going to give you nuclear submarines.
Well, you bring up
Or
interesting.
we'll park one in your front yard so no one messes with you.
I
And
mean,
that's the
because
value
Tony
of America.
basically, that is something Tony makes, right? He produces
That's
guns. He
something that
sells your
Tony
kids
does.
guns. He'll sell them in the
Tony has lots
schools.
of guns. If you go inside his house, he's got lots of guns.
He's got
And
lots
not
of
just
guns.
that, Tony parks and has guns lying around all around the neighborhood with
They're
people
all over
holding
the
onto
house.
those
Yeah,
guns.
he's like he's definitely a gun dealer. The garage is packed full of like making guns, and they're all made in Tony's garage.
And he's also got bullets. Once you buy his guns, you need his bullets. That's what's happening. You know, like, and not just that. Even if you have bullets, even if you can make your own bullets and you can make your own stuff, you know, Tony's got some new stuff that you need to buy, otherwise you're out too. And that's part of the technology side as well.
Now, I mean, to your point, like all over Europe, the war that's going on right now with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, as we produce a massive amount of weapons, 70% of NATO spending in Europe is spent in the United States. So as much as we complain, like, we want them all to get to 5%, 70% of what they do spend, they spend here. Since the invasion, France is now the second largest arms dealer. However, the U.S. still supplies like 46, 47% of all arms in the world. So we are definitely like supplying any gun anywhere. It's like, oh, I got a gun for you. Tony's like, check out this one. I got, and then you're right. Once you supply weapons, it's a long-term contract. So you see France is trying to tell everyone, hey, lay off the F-36 or the F-16, not the F-16. What's their latest? F-35. Lay off the F-35. Check out ours. It's much better. And all of those are to really get long-term contracts. So it brings up the same point. This is similar to tariffs. Why pushing other countries to spend more is actually bad for the U.S. because we have a monopoly. We have a monopoly on arms. And the monopoly is proven. So when they looked at, Stanford did a report on how much money we've actually get credit for sending to Ukraine. So it's around $110 billion we've actually given to them. About $68 billion of that is in war credits. And war credits means we don't give them actual money. We say, here's a catalog, just pick from the catalog and here's your credit we'll give you for it. When we sell it to them, they found that we're selling most of our equipment at 3 to 4 times value. And most of the equipment is used secondhand. So 3 to 4 times book value, we're selling it used. So this is stuff, we have a general who talked about how most of this has to be thrown away almost 6 years ago. And now we are selling it like crazy all over NATO and to Ukraine. We're selling lots of stuff, cleaning our stuff up. So if we were to push worlds to spend more up to their 5%, this really forces those countries to now look at alternatives. It forces countries to now produce. Germany announced they are now they're going to have a budget of like 1.2 trillion to now put towards arms. Japan has announced they're going to start doing stuff because they've lost trust in the U.S. So this hurts us. The U.S. monopoly, and I'm speaking from as an American, it hurts us in the sense that our monopoly power can be fractured. So by forcing countries to spend more in NATO, the U.S. is hurting itself by reducing the amount of that money that they do spend in the U.S., which is our monopoly power. So if we have to start selling secondhand equipment at 50%, well, you see our pricing power that we had as a monopoly goes away, and overall American companies are hurt because our weapons are definitely 100% made in Tony's garage.
Do you know where the majority of Tony's weapons get sold?
Outside of
it's not
our
to
yard.
Ukraine. It's not to Ukraine.
No, it's definitely not to Ukraine. It's all over. Israel gets $2 billion a year in war credits. Palestine was getting $2 billion in aid, which they would sell for weapons. We've made deals all over NATO where, depending on what you're looking for, we're selling stuff. But NATO, it's a requirement.
There's a 7-country war plan that America's had since the 90s. There's only one country that they haven't gone to war with in that plan still. And I think you guys are gearing up to go do it under Trump. It's Iran. So, and every country...
Iran has been pumping up the amount of stuff they make now.
and they also buy a lot of your old weapons too.
But
And
the Shaheed, a lot of stuff they make the Shaheed
a lot of their money, a lot of their billions of dollars that have gone towards weapons manufacture and acquisition has come from the Biden administration. There was
well, we did end
some
up paying them
major
in
credits
dollars
that were
we
given to them.
released, right?
Yeah. So what I'm saying, but this has happened everywhere. Who gave Saddam Hussein all of his weapons? Who gave Saddam Hussein F-16s? Like, so
Well, at that time
it's
it wasn't Iran, but
no, that was one of the other 7
Right.
countries that America over the last, it's taken them a little bit longer. Originally they wanted to do it well, it wasn't even America's plan. This is the funny thing. It was Israel's plan. And they gave it to George W. Bush. And he said, no, let's shelve it. I'm not doing it in my administration. He passed it on. He lost the re-election. Clinton got in, right? And it came back onto the agenda under George Bush Jr., but only after 9/11. Because after 9/11, you have the American spirit and willpower to go along with a plan to wipe out terrorism, right? So terrorism was then, the majority of terrorism was in those 7 countries. And even today, like, when did we bomb Yemen? Or when did you bomb Yemen? Sorry, was that yesterday, the day before? Still bombing.
Yeah, last week.
Yeah,
right?
so that's one of the countries, right? So there's a bunch of these countries where America has made sure that they're well armed, so that they can
yes and
so that
no,
they can
but
fight
on the other
and take
the
over
other
them.
side of
They can
the other
present
side
them
of
as
the
a danger
global-
if they're well armed. And I think that's part of America's plan. Even if they lose some trade with the weapons, those countries, America's going to make deals with them because they'll be afraid of having to use those weapons.
No, well, I definitely agree, but there's on the other side of the arms discussion is Russia. They have to be mentioned. They used to be the world's 2nd largest arms dealer until the invasion, and now they are begging. But you bring up who are these axis of allies that are starting to reshape the world today? China loves the invasion of Ukraine because for them, they're like, listen, a weak Russia is great for us because you do whatever we want. You become a vassal state. And if the U.S. is having to spend a bunch of money,
China as well. So
exactly. So it only makes Russia beholden. That makes them a vassal state to China. So China's like, well, this is great, and I get really cheap oil. So, keep this going. I definitely do not want to lose because if anything in Taiwan, I want to show that it's there and I can use it as a threat anytime I want to take it. And so for them, it's a proxy fight. But North Korea has now offered at least 2,000 troops. There's estimates as much as 10, but semi-confirmed from the Ukrainian side that there's been 2,000 troops sent to help fight in Kursk, win back Kursk. But North Korea, ostensibly, Putin did hint that he would, share some of their faster, more explosive, hydrogen bombs versus atomic bombs, nuclear weapons. And so some of those conversations have gone unhinted, so the relationships are getting stronger. And North Korea would love to be in the arms race and be able to sell more people weapons. As you mentioned, Iran itself is wanting to get in the arms race. They sell a tremendous amount to Russia right now. So the Shaheed drones are all Iranian, and on average, there's 75 going into Ukraine a night, flying over a civilian. And so, the Shaheed drone is just, they pump them out. So then again, if you were to force the U.S. or force NATO and other countries to spend more, they're going to spend less of it in the U.S., which means they are going to start looking at other arms dealers, which now not only props up like France, but it props up countries like Iran, North Korea, and when this invasion is over and Russia goes home, eventually Russia. And so it does end up arming the opposite side in addition by forcing all of your partners basically to spend more and to do less in the U.S. So
it's creating a demand in the market though, too. So there's gonna be more. There's gonna be more customers. Like it's like saying it's like Coke not wanting soda to be in the market. Like Coke. Anywhere that there's soda, Coke's gonna be there. You know what I mean? And like if anything,
well, it's like Coke not wanting Pepsi in the market. That's the difference. Is Coke doesn't want Pepsi because then everything's Coke. And if there is a Pepsi, well, there may be the same demand, but now they got to share it with Pepsi. And that's the issue, is that the U.S. right now is the largest, arms dealer in the world. And by allowing more to step up, you're going to see France, you're going to see Iran, which is already sanctioned and able to sell all these arms under sanctions.
I don't see the world like you, man, because you're looking at Coke as just the actual Coke fluid, right? And I see Coke as the company. And so Coke would love wherever Pepsi can get into, I bet you Coke can get into. And so, no, Coke loves Pepsi being in the market because anyone who's exposed to sugar is going to become a Coke customer.
So
that's what I'm saying.
You're saying that
America's relying on this
once they like guns,
war,
they like lots of guns.
Exactly. So America's hoping that, go check out all the guns in the world. And then if you want to see the better ones, or not just that, like, if you ever have to use them, like, I think that's where it's going to go. I think, like, there's going to be some conflict in some areas, I think. I think there's going to be. But I think a lot of the new world will be forged out of treaties through companies that have tried to protect themselves from what happens if there isn't a world police.
Mm.
And I think that's what, I think, America's like trying to hedge its bets with everything. I think, I don't know. Like, I think a lot of the hysteria, there is obviously signs that we can see impacting straight away the economy, of negative signs of what Trump has done. But, that's always going to happen anytime there's experts telling you that the world's going to end, you're going to have a hard day on Wall Street. You watch the next couple of days and see what happens. You watch the next couple of weeks even. This only happened just a while ago, I believe, with some, I forget what it was, but there's a lot of countries that weren't going to go along with President Trump for some reason or another, and they've all gone and kissed his...
There's an economist that works in the White House. It was Peter Navarro's original plan. Peter Navarro is an economist here in the U.S. He really focused on the Chinese market, was with Trump in the first administration, and now is like a proxy advisor of sorts. But he started, but there's another economist in the White House who's really drafted this plan of here's how we're going to use the tariffs. And one of them is so we can get better terms. And so if you're going to do that, I mean, that's fine. Use it for negotiations, renegotiate some kind of a trade deal if you feel there's something to be gained or lost or whatever. But the whiplash policy does not match any of that. Whiplash means small businesses are having to spend thousands to pay lawyers to be like, well, now here's what you do. Now here's what you do. Now here's what you do. But inside of that, the second one was to say, okay, well, now we're going to use the tariffs to actually, pay off a lot of our debt. So they have this whole idea that they'll be able to now generate something like $5 trillion a year off of tariffs.
I'm sure that's part of the sales
blows
pitch.
My mind.
Yeah.
Right. However, the plan has quite shifted, and I think a lot of that, as they've had to implement it, they've come to reason what is going to be reality, because the plan went from let's implement this to raise revenue. Now no one talks about the amount of revenue they're going to generate from it. Now it is, if you put a tariff on us, we'll put a tariff on you. So now it's reciprocity. And so the message has changed already from being something that generates revenue to you did it to us first, so we're doing it to you. So they're basically trying to back out of tariffs, but they've already said they're going to do it. So how do they do it without doing it? And so it's already kind of a version 2 of tariffs just in the last
That's how you can tell it's
days.
Presented as a negotiating term. That's not really what it is. And back to your point of hurting the economy, if we are actually in a war, which I believe we are, this is the softest way of doing the renegotiation without having major catastrophes and hurting partnerships in a way that can really damage relations, for generations. If we're killing each other, it's going to be a lot harder to forgive each other than if we slap an extra tax on each other to try and negotiate new terms. And I feel like that's really what's happening. I feel like what we're doing is we're moving away from the United Nations or the League of Nations before that, like all of these agreements and terms that were basically agreed upon after World War II. And everything's kind of an extension of that. And I think we're going back through, where power really is in the world and what those forces are after right now. And I think rather than trying to kill everyone to come up with these new agreements, I think this is what we're witnessing. I think we're witnessing a technological trade war, and propaganda war to try and win hearts and minds and stop, and trying to take over countries or nations or peoples without the conflict that you've seen in the past. I think that is definitely happening. So let's say, yeah, I think we there's definitely going to be a lot of howling and gnashing of teeth, but probably better over financial and economic outlooks than losing houses and family members. I guess that's my point. I guess, yeah.
You heard it here, folks. Thanks for watching. We are Hostile Dysfunction. Until next time.